One of the things I was really interested in playing for Phil Jackson and now, getting to coach as long as you've coached and you've had obviously your ups and downs when you were playing the game. I'm
Yeah.
wondering like how mindfulness impacted you or when that was a thing or when you started even thinking about the mental side of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember vividly. I tell the story a lot. It was my rookie season with the Lakers, and I didn't know what to expect. Just kind of poking around, just kind of with curiosity and asking questions, and kind of just trying to get a feel for it. I think one of the things I know now is like I'm pretty good at sensing environments and cultures, and kind of just finding my way because I was always the new kid. So I kind of would sit in the corner and observe. Right at the beginning of the season, we went in for a film session. It might have been the first game of the season, but early in the season, we went in for a film session for a shoot around. And before we started the film, coach just got a chair and then sat in the front of the film theater, and was just like, all right, we're going to take a second to breathe. So he introduced, meditation to everyone who hadn't participated, and I was a pretty insecure, young, naive, arrogant kid at the time, and kind of looking around like, what's going on? And sure enough, we started, and he kind of introduced it to us, and look, and Kobe's right there, Fish is right there. Lamar and Andrew Bynum were all sitting there and meditating with their eyes closed. And then I remember vividly as well after I think it was probably 10 minutes, maybe less. But it was as calm as I had felt for a long time. I think I've dealt with anxiety for a long time. And it was just an incredible relief.
So when you were going about that meditation and you were following your breath, was like some insider info? Was Phil like cueing you guys, or was it just like, for the next couple
Yeah.
minutes, if you can follow your breath? Like what was it exactly?
Well, yes, just to move to the front of our chairs, straighten our spines as if a string was pulling our head to the ceiling or to the sky. He had us put our hands in a mudra, and explained that in our laps, and then asked us to close our eyes. And then I remember the visualization that he presented was as if a frog on a lily pad, to be aware and alert, and then but very still and quiet. And if a fly comes, as if a thought would come, he observes it, reacts to it, eats it, and then just goes back to being still and quiet. So I remember, there's a door to our left that there's some noise outside, and the mind wandered, and then he just instructed us to bring our attention back to our breath. And yeah, that was kind of the introduction, and it's been probably, I think, 2008, so like 18 years. It's not very good math, but the year's about to change right now. So but yeah, that was the introduction.
I noticed you got it looks like some mala beads or some prayer beads on your wrist. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my daughter, or my wife and daughters, bought them for me for Christmas. So that's just a reminder why I do this. We're away from our families a lot. Just to have them with me and be seen. I think in this culture it's not necessarily celebrated in a lot of cultures in this environment. So yeah, I think it's something that's important to me. My family's as important as anything in the world to me, if not more. And raising two daughters who are about to turn 10 and 8, and trying to help them figure out a way to be themselves in this world is going to be a fun challenge.
Yeah, I think that's a cool thing to think about and talk about. I wonder, going through the years of being, kind of a high status individual where people are always kind of maybe grabbing at your attention and wanting things from you and trying to like assert personal boundaries and saying, this is who I am, this is who I'm not. How's that journey been for you, the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think unique to my journey is the fact that who my father is, and so I operate in a world that everyone, almost 80% of the people I meet or see in this field, know me through my father, or like the preface, "Hey, how's your dad?" So I think having that legacy is something that I've dealt with, and I think that was the introduction to fame and power and freedoms, financial freedoms, or whatever it is, liberties to go to games and be back in the locker room and have access to these things. So I think for me, that was my introduction as being the new kid. Trying to figure out, are these people being friends with me because they like who I am, or they want to be, they like what we do together, or what they can get from me. So I think, my just reaction was at a young age was just to be a recluse. I was very homebodied. I stayed home. I really was introverted. I didn't really have a lot of friends. And I think that was a survival mechanism that I kind of learned at a young age. And trust has always been, something that's difficult for me because of some of those scars. Um, but I think that process. I think as a world, as a country right now, we're going through a similar process in terms of the way our media, our social media, the way people are kind of interacting with the world rather than with people. It's a transactional nature. So I think, in a lot of ways, I have those scars and I have some of that suffering that can propel me forward to try to right those wrongs, or try to create a different future. Yeah, my daughter actually asked me the other day, "Are you famous?" And you alluded to that. I don't really look at who I am as famous. I think I'm just a kid who was fortunate enough to grow up in an environment, and I learned how to succeed in those environments. I learned some really helpful habits. I saw what it took to be successful at this level, and I just emulated a lot of the people and learned from a lot of the people that I was around. So I've never really, I've lost my way at times, just in terms of being naive, like I alluded to, and arrogant, and kind of just the waves of life. But I think just being around so many successful people throughout my life, and teammates and mentors and teachers, that I never really consider myself, of that ilk.
With your current role, even in the role that you've played in the G League as a coach, how have you helped younger players understand some of the things that you've learned?
Yeah, I think that's really what I dove into with my last stint with Delaware. So South Bay was a great exploration. Working with Scott, we had an incredible staff there. The ownership group, starting with Jeannie and Joey Buss and Jesse Buss, and our GM Nick Mazzella just gave me an opportunity to run my own program. And really, they gave me a ton of autonomy. Luke Walton helped me get hired there, and he was a brand new head coach there. And so we really explored like culture in a lot of different ways. And my idea as a head coach entering into that experience was, hey, let's go have some fun. Like, this is, and I think that was part of that talk that I had in Vegas, where we were first interacting, and 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 it actually really was successful. We were fortunate to have a group that was an incredibly talented, ready, prone group to have success that had already had success at the G League level, and I came in and was a beneficiary of it in a lot of ways. But I think what I was able to do in that experience was open up the window to have fun, and figure out how to enjoy these ups and downs, really celebrate some of these things. Like, I played in that league, and no one wants to be in that league, but the truth is, it's a special opportunity to be part of a team. So no matter what team you're part of, those things are special opportunities. And I had an 8-year career, and I look back on every single team, and I can tell you the feeling in that locker room. I can tell you the pain. I can tell you those relationships. I can tell you what the coach was doing. And I think, I might be different than most, but I think those are the experiences that we look back on. And I know from my life, I had some regrets not looking around and celebrating some of those things. So that was my experience. But then when I got to Delaware, what I really dove into was, I saw Phil Jackson, and he told me, like, for coaching, one of the most important things is figuring out how to win. And I think it's a funny statement to say that, because it's so simple, but that's who Phil is. And I think it really got me thinking. Like, I was so in South Bay, we tried a lot of unique things, and we really created an incredible environment. Like those people that we worked with and those players that we were privileged to work with are still close friends and people that will share, great memories forever. But when I got to Delaware, I really, like kind of reflected on, okay, what does it take to win at this level? And I think some of the things that it takes is, I was talking to one of our players the other day about this. Is there's a Nike sign when we were in Portland at Nike Town or in the employee store. It says, with Kobe was on it, it said, "Winning isn't for everyone." And I think there is a reality to winning that isn't easy and isn't fun. And that's what I dove into with our second experience, or with my second opportunity to be a head coach in Delaware, was all right, how do we figure out a way to win? And then we'll create an environment around that to help support those things. And I think a lot of that was teaching our staff, or mentoring and talking to and teaching our staff and players about, hey, like I get that we want to be somewhere else and that we're all ambitious at this level. And we are some of the most successful people at our positions in the world, but we also want more. You always want more, but the only way to get more is to be present and do right now well. And I think that was a lesson that I really enjoyed, having that opportunity to coach those guys, because like I think about like a Mac McClung, super successful, super ambitious, super individually driven. And I'm so proud of him because he had all this individual success in our season with the dunk contest championship. But I think it gets swept under the rug. He was a huge piece to a championship team. And I think, with an individual talent like that, I think people forget that, like, the willingness for him to collaborate and to sacrifice and to evolve to be a winner at that level is like something that not too many people have done and can do. So
What I'm hearing, like a reoccurring theme, it's like this ability to slow down and just appreciate it when you have it. And I wonder, do you have specific things that you're thinking about throughout a season, or, whether you're head coaching or assistant coaching, whatever role you're playing, like how do you help players adjust their perspective?
I listen. I think that's my favorite thing to do with the guys, is because we have so many talented coaches at this level and so many talented players and so many pieces to our support staff that, like, they're good at their job. But I think what I'd really try to focus on is creating space in my life where I have boundaries, and I have great communication with my wife, and we have expectations with each other that we try to uphold with each other. So when I go to work, that I am present, and I can be whole.
If this is too personal, you can just tell me. But like specifically, like with your wife, what would be an example of, like, I guess, assertive communication and just being on the same page?
Yeah, I mean, we're not perfect at it. Like it's hard. We have two kids, and she's in Idaho right now traveling to see her family, and her sister just had a new daughter, and I'm in Sacramento, and we traveled to. It's like it's not easy in this business, and but I think that's why I like doing hard things. Then I like trying to be successful at something that people maybe aren't willing to try. And um, I think, for example, like we flew to Boston, and my daughter was like, "Dad, I want to be, home for Christmas." And I said, so, "Yeah, I want to be home for Christmas too." But that's not something I'm able to do. So I would rather be with you than, I don't care where I am. So we paid that cost and flew to Boston, and, they had to fly in, and a lot of that's their sacrifice, right? They had to fly in the day before the game, and then they had to leave basically the afternoon before the game because we were flying home after, right? Another one is we're not doing as good a job this year, but last year I think we did a better job. Is every time I'm in town, we get a babysitter and I go on a date night. We go on a date night. Whenever I have opportunities to take the kids to school in the morning, whenever I can, I pick them up from school. Um, we our screen time is limited. Again, one of those things that I'm not perfect at, but and sometimes not even good at. But those are some of the ambitions and some of the things that we hold each other accountable, and also creating space, in a weekly schedule to like find a time to sit down and talk for an hour and just check in. And a lot of this has been evolved from my personal coaching and counseling that I have a psychologist and coach, and then part of it as well as evolved through, marriage counseling. Um, and so I think, getting help and seeking help and getting perspective has been super valuable for my life.
Would you say you have like go-to lines, like or phrases, or just something that you could say that's really easy when you check in? Like I know for me, it's how can I support you right now,
Hmm.
and that kind of opens up the door. Is there anything that comes to mind that's been helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I think we like I'm a complicated human being. My wife is too. I think we all are. But I think, like one of the things that we joke about at times is just, how are you? Like how are you doing? And I think I just read an Adam Grant quote. It was talking about like when someone is struggling, you, it's actually patronizing to ask, like, tell them to encourage them to be happy. What's more important is just to be a steady hand in those moments, and I think listening is a big part of that. And I think that's the reality of it. Is if you're going to do anything really hard, which what we're doing for our family is really hard. I think you got to be willing to take those moments to be with each other and hear some of that suffering and hear some of the pain and hear some of the struggles, so you can try to alleviate some of them in the future, and come up with some communication or some habits or some changes that will make it a little easier or a little better, right? And those actions matter, and I think it's something that I've learned and throughout my life is actions matter. It's like intentions are beautiful, and but like actions do matter.
When did listening kick in for you? Like when did you awaken to the importance of listening? Was it a moment in your coaching career? Was it off the court? Was it just kind of a buildup? Like, man, like I haven't been able to really get through to this person. I got to try something new. Like, what was it for you?
Yeah, there's a couple, right? We talked about the meditation, right? I think that's meditation is a big piece of it. I took a course at Boise State University. It was funny. It was called listening. In the first 10 minutes of class, it was listening. But I don't know, like, if the curriculum was intentionally, like was wanted to be meditation, but they had to like cover it up as listening. But like that's what it was, and I think that was kind of an introduction to it. Obviously, the meditating with Phil, um, and then spending time with Phil. Like I visited him a couple times in Montana, and it's just me and him. And I think that his presence has been a really, really special example for me. And when I say presence is he's present. He's there. He's listening. He's paying attention, even if he doesn't respond immediately, which my dad does, and my wife hates that I do too. Is I'm listening, and I'm also like I'm thinking through it, right? I'm not reacting to it. I want to respond to it. And then there was a call my first year at South Bay. We had a player that Phil had worked with in New York on our team, and I was really struggling to get him to break through, like kind of like get through that. He's a little bit of a perfectionist, but he's a really good player. But he would get down on himself and he'd go through ebbs and flows. And I wanted to kind of get some perspective from Phil and see if there's like any trick or hack. And I called him and he said, well, you know, I think when you think about this player, you got to recognize that he's an identical twin. And that was like, it like clicked for me. I was like, I'm thinking at such a simple level that I'm not doing a deep enough dive into like who these people are, right? So then some conversations I've been privileged to have with Michael Gervais is like that kind of dove me in to do more work on myself and figure out who I was, right? So I can understand who I am in this world, in this environment, and how I respond and react to things, right? And then that's allowed me to help to understand other people. And the only way to understand other people, another Phil reference is, Zen Mind, Beginner Mind talks about like if you seek to control a human being, it's impossible. But the only thing close to it is giving them a wide pasture and watch them closely. And I think that's what listening is not responding with my own feelings or my own reaction or my own bias, but just listening and seeking to understand them, where they're at. And I think so. Kind of all those things interlaced together is, and then also like the appreciation and perspective that we talked about. Like you say this about me the last 15 years as a famous person, but like my father's a Hall of Fame NBA coach. I played with Kobe Bryant, Steph Curry, and you know Phil Jackson was one of my. It's like so I'm around these really really influential, impactful people on our society at large. So I think it's humbling to know everyone has this different path and the perspective that, okay, I grew up in this world. Not everyone had the privilege of growing up in this world, right? So like that's kind of been my path for a long time. Is like I want to give everything I know to help our players or help people or coaches, anyone who wants to find their path and share their genius with other people. And I think just thinking back again, like with Mac McClung. Mac comes from a small country town in I think it was Tennessee. No, it was West Virginia. It's right on the border. But like I have no idea. I have no idea what that life would be like to be a YouTube sensation in that situation. Or, we had Luke King on that same championship team. He grew up in New Jersey. He was the sixth of six boys, with I think living in a small house. And it's like once you really start to kind of dive deeper into these people, I think you can, if you're paying attention, you can really kind of start to understand them at a deeper level and understand why they're reacting and why they're responding to some of these situations the way they are.
I remember Dave Severance is his name,
Yep.
the player development coach with, I think he was with the Clippers at the time.
Yeah, of course.
And he was at that same clinic that you did in Vegas with Mike Procopio. And he was talking about, I'm probably butchering this, but it was about peeling the layers,
Hmm.
um, getting to know somebody, and that it takes time. Like it's not something necessarily that you're going to jump into about all their family history. And so I'm
Hmm.
wondering for you, like what the process is when you first get to meet a player, someone signs, and what it looks like for you at this point.
Yeah, I think that's been part of my growth and the excitement of this opportunity I have as an assistant coach, because it's so different at this level than it is at the G League level, and the position I'm in versus the position I had at the G League. Right, when you're the head coach, I think you get immediate validation in terms of there's a immediate responsiveness to your curiosity. I think there is a respect for authority at some level, right? And I think, at this level, like I said, our support staff is so big. I'm one of, I think it's 14 coaches, and so like I understand like there's a lot of people trying to get to our players, right? So I have to respect their space. And I think again, a lot of is sitting back and observing and trying to get to know them and see like do they have like some people it's just not the right time. Maybe they don't have space in their life to have that conversation. Maybe they don't trust me because they just don't know me, and they got people in their life that they'll probably never like. So I think a lot of it's about being patient and waiting for the right opportunity. Like I truly love like my job when I get the opportunity to have those conversations, but a couple of them have occurred on the bus. One was after shoot around. Like one of the guys who's new to our team was in the back of the bus, and I had he's really really thoughtful guy, but he also had a lot of people coming at him all season, and I hadn't really engaged him, but I could tell that he was struggling a little bit. So I went down back there and we had a 30-minute conversation, 40-minute conversation. He was super inquisitive and thankful, and super rewarding for me to like just share something and have him understand that I see you. I know what I'm going through similar things, right? And I think that really helps me. So I want to be that for others. And I had the experience again after the game the other night, and it was just a organic conversation about, hey, like you played in Europe, I played in Europe. How was your experience? What happened here when you were, your first stint on this team, and we got to go through his whole playing career, and like he doesn't know it. He might, but that really helps me understand him, and it allows me to try to figure out how to help him whenever he needs that.
With all that being said, I'm wondering at this point, like, doing all this work on yourself, getting all these different kinds of experiences that you've had, becoming an assistant coach again. When you do become a head coach again, if that's something that you're interested in doing, what are things that you're thinking about when you think about the mental game? Like, has anything changed for you? Is there little things that you like to experiment with and try?
I think I would double down with a lot of stuff that we started in South Bay. I was just texting a friend of mine in the NBA who I know has a similar ideas and execute some of those ideas with his group, and just telling him how much I appreciated that, because it's not the norm, and it's not easy. So I think really just trying to create a group of coaches and staff that really wants to listen to and kind of accept people where they're at, and work together with a group of people, and collaborate with others, and love people, and figure out how to understand people, and not be naive to it's going to be difficult, and there's going to be pains, but there's going to be a lot of joys as well if you're in it together with someone. So I think doubling down on just the human side of it, I think, and then I think what I would really want to do, and I'm curious to do, in my future off time, or post season, is really, I want to, like, kind of have conversations like this with other people at the top of their game. I have relationships with some of those people, but man, I'm super curious about. I really think there's something that can be done. I think Michael Gervais and Pete Carroll did an incredible job in Seattle. I think that's one of the best models I've seen. But I think it can be done at the NBA level, and I think there are some teams doing that as well.
What specifically did you really? I know we've touched on like some general concepts, but like with South Bay, with the relationship side, with the coaching side, like what specifically would you double down on?
Well, like I was talking to one of the guys I worked with in South Bay, and one of the things we did, who I stole it from Boise State's head coach Leon Rice, is we did, what was it, five F's or H's? Yeah, I think it was H's. So it's like history, heartache, and I forgot what all of them were, but it's basically just diving into each player's life and giving them an opportunity for 5 to 10 minutes to share where they come from, why they do this, who they do it for, some of their adversity, some of the people that inspired them, that brought them along, and some of the things that they like to do off the court, and some of the things that they want, their dreams. It's like, so I think just giving people opportunity and space to talk about, who are they in this environment, right? Because we're all icebergs in a sense. Like we come to these environments, and there's not a lot of opportunity to be seen, as your authentic self, because it's so there's such a drive to succeed, and there's such a drive to get more, and work hard, and keep your head down, right? So I think it's taking those opportunities to take a deep breath, and take a look at people from a different perspective. I remember, I think it was my second year in South, maybe my third. Meta World Peace, Ron Artest joined our staff, and we did an exercise that was called FORD. It was family, occupation, which we just turned occupation into your playing history, and recreation, what you like to do off the court, and then dreams. And we had everyone step up, and it took them 1 to 5 minutes. We had a couple of tears shed, and Meta after the talk, he's like, that was fucking incredible. Like, I've never, like, I wish I would have done that with my teammates. That was awesome. And it's like, for a guy as tough as Meta, if you ever get to know him or have known him, he's very thoughtful. But obviously has that tough exterior, that and a history behind it. But it was those things are really refreshing to just give people those opportunities to hear about the people that they're working with and that they're fighting for and that they're collaborating with.
Would you meditate with your team?
So in South Bay, we did it. Scott actually led a couple. I think it was like audio, and then in Delaware was the first time that I led meditations with our group in front of them. Like so, yeah, we throughout the year we would meditate. With the first year, we had a group that I felt like it was right. It worked for that group where you know on our journey before like we would have like morning meetings for our game. It was during the showcase, so we didn't have shoot around. But we'd sit for 5 minutes before we would go through the video and the scout, just to calm ourselves and to bring ourselves to the moment. And different groups it was different. Some are more receptive and some are more appreciative, and but yeah, we would have meditations throughout the season at times, and and it's just a feel thing, and I think a lot of it has to do with my feel on how the group is. And I remember Phil said this during our finals run my rookie season. He just we hadn't meditated in a while, and it was during the finals, and he just said, I feel like we need to sit and just take a deep breath. So I think that's kind of the essence of it is let's slow ourselves down. Feels like we're in a bit of a hurry. And another piece to it that he shared with me was he liked to meditate before film to remove the ego from the situation. This is your past self. This isn't you. What we're talking about, these are actions that happened in the past. This isn't you as a person. These aren't threatening. It's just observations and information.
When you initially, like, I know you said there was multiple groups that you had done the meditation with. How did you open up this idea that, hey, we're going to sit down and breathe, or go through this? And then my next question was, how did you work with some of the pushback?
Mm-hmm. You know what? I never had pushback. I think the only pushback I felt was just that fear, the anxiety of being different and being in front of a group that, sitting in front of a group with your eyes closed and knowing that there's probably multiple guys that aren't participating or looking at you, or feeling uncomfortable. So I think, that part of that is just that endurance and that courage to not give in to those things. One of the principles that the last principle that we had in Delaware that I helped created was reset, rinse, and repeat. And the premise of it was to, after the game or after a success or after a failure, is go home, talk to some loved ones, get some rest, get some food, hydrate yourself, and clear your mind, and then come back and do it again. And so I think that was part of the recovery process is that the ability to remove past success or failure and be present again. And I think a lot of success to me that I failed at a younger age is allowing some of those emotions to intoxicate you, whether negatively or positively. And so that was just something that I explained that, hey, this is what, from what I understand and what I've learned in my life and the people I've studied, that this is a really important part to being successful is bringing ourselves here to be present and eliminating these past events and preparing ourselves for something in the moment, and also preparing ourselves for what we want in the future.
Yeah, I feel that too. I felt, that when I was leading guys through meditations this year, it had to be done sometimes a specific way because of that fear and anxiety of how I look when I'm doing this. Some guys, we were doing the meditations on courtside, and then other guys that had to be in a private room,
Mm-hmm.
because they're always kind of sneaking a peek at who is walking into the arena, into the
Yeah.
gym. So that resonates with me.
Yeah,
Quite a
absolutely.
bit.
And like to your point, like meditation is different for everyone. Walking meditation, like basketball can be a meditation. I know I did a podcast with Meta World Peace. He said he was during the finals game 6, he was breathing, like he's focused on his breathing the whole time. That's a form of meditation, is that mindfulness and that focus. So I think yeah, I think it's very different for everyone. So I think that's what makes it so fun is to realize and recognize that there is no right or wrong.
Breathing. And I wonder what that looks like for you, like as a coach during a game, even like, is that something that you try to come back to when, I don't know, when there is an emotional reaction to something and maybe you're off center? Is that a strategy that's important to you?
Typically, I'll try, like if I'm anxious, if I feel anxious, I'll try to breathe before a game privately. Um, Obviously, during the national anthem, I'll bring my attention to my breath and try to settle myself. But typically, and I learned this from my experience in Delaware, and it was part of it. Part of the principles was, the first one was show up. That was one, and then do the work was two, and the third one was let it fly. So it was part of like what I wrote down and came up with was, showing up is being present, right? So that goes back to the recovery piece is being willing and able and ready, and then doing the work is, that can be the hard part in a lot of ways because it isn't fun, it isn't rewarding at times. There is a suffering dynamic to it, and there is a vulnerability to it. But then I had to live by the third principle of let it fly. And that was something that, like when it really got complicated, when we got to the finals, it was, you asked, is there a statement I use with my wife? Is one of the things that kind of resonated deeply with me and keeps hitting home even at this level is do simple better. So I think when the pressure gets higher and the intensity gets higher and the focus is higher, I think you got to do simple even better. And that's where you rest on your work, not, you're not anxious or thinking or trying in that moment. And so I think when it comes to a game, is I try to find a space of peace in the sense that like I'm ready for whatever happens, and I'm ready to respond to whatever happens in that moment, and I'm not going to react to it, because I feel like my responsibility as one of the leaders of our group is to show poise and to show courage and to show confidence. And so, yeah, that to me, the game is kind of like, because I've been around it so long, it is a very soothing process to me. Like it brings me a lot of joy to watch our players play the game. I think that's a really important word, is play. Um, and and so like when I'm participating and coaching a game, it's more an observation process and experimentation process, and I'm taking in I'm taking information, and a lot of that information is based on body language, emotional responses to things, and I didn't really learn that until later in Delaware. Is like I'm paying a lot of attention to our guys' eyes. I'm paying a lot of attention to their interactions with each other, the way that they're walking, the way that who they're talking to, how they're talking, the way that they're playing, the way that they're responding to success or failure. So I think a lot of it is based on that.
How do you balance preparation with intuition with, in the process of making a decision? Like
Yeah,
you have a plan for how the game's going to go and how you think it's going to go. You've done the scout, but in the moment, like you're like, this feels right. How do you go about that process?
I think some of the work I've done with my coach that I work with is I remember I said like, oh, it doesn't matter, and she's like, no, it does matter. Tell me what you think is gonna happen. That's feel, intuition, and then but we'll mark it down, and then we'll see what happens. So like part of that, like that started a long chain for me. Is like I love just hypothesizing or just seeing what happens. Like I feel like this is going to happen, and then I observe it, and then whatever happens, then I'm really excited if I'm wrong, because then I can kind of go back and be like, what did I miss, right? Like I missed something, and then if I'm right, like it kind of fortifies that belief or that feel. Um, so I think it. I love, like, especially with like the interactions of players, like the combinations of players on a floor. I love tinkering with that. But my attention is always focused on my group, um, and like what gives my group energy, what gives my group focus, what gives my group confidence, what gives my group energy, what takes our group's energy, what is taking our group's energy away. Like so, like I think those are the things that I'm paying attention to my group a lot. So like once the games start, I obviously know their pieces, and then the things that they're trying to get done, and the strengths that they have. But a lot of it is trying to figure out how to create the most confident group that we can have. And really, I'm not paying a ton of attention to the scoreboard as much as I am to like our confidence that we're playing with, and the fluidity and the flow, and kind of the how fluid are we getting to the next play? How fluidly are we moving the ball? How fluidly are we handling adversity? How fluidly are we handling difficulties like switching and defensive assignments?
Yeah. Last few questions for you, Coach. I know I'm kind of probing here, but is there, when we're looking at like things that are signaling resilience, I know
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned a few things there. Is there anything else that really jumps out at you that signals confidence from your group, where you're like, man, we're in it, like we're right where we need to be, versus shit, we're in
Yeah,
some
I think
trouble.
I think I think I think about this a lot. I think how when they miss a shot, or when our groups miss a shot, how is the person shooting it? How do they react? And then how do their teammates react? So I think when we're struggling and we're frustrated and we're dealing with some friction, for whatever it is, emotional, physical, the opponent, um, and you see a reaction to those things, I think that all right, we got to create a better focus. We got but I think there's a couple games that I've coached, and I think this is what you're alluding to. Is one of them was the Eastern Conference Finals game, my first year in Delaware. We were in Toronto, Mississauga, versus a really good, really well coached team that had beat us that season and really given us a lot of troubles. And we were down, we were depleted, and man, we started that game, and I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. We started that game, and our guys were playing so hard with no ambition, like no fear. Like they were just completely free and playing with such confidence. And even if it was a bad shot, we had guys attacking offensive glass, the guys getting back, sprinting back, and making extra efforts defensively for the guy who took a bad shot. It's like I think those things you can tell in comparison sometimes is like, okay, well, Jon took a bad shot earlier in the season, and our whole group reacted negatively to it, right? And then Jon takes another bad shot in the Eastern Conference Finals, and our group doesn't even react negatively, but Jon is capable of accepting that failure and say, "Hey, that's on me. I'll get the next one." It's like that accountability. So I think those are some of the things that come to mind, is like that the self accountability, and then the group's willingness to like support people through failure, and just get on to the next play, and then also like handle like adversities, like let's just say this group that we were playing that game, they were a really offensive rebounding team, and we really struggled to keep them off the glass, and we were undersized. So it's like, and then they were a really downhill driving team. So like the huge piece of the game plan was like, hey, we got to support with like 2 to 3 guys every time they drive it, and then we need 5 guys rebounding. And that responsiveness, when we saw it, like not even when it happened, but the lead up to it, right? Guys were getting into position to be ready to get each other's back in those moments. And then the responsiveness on the shot, they weren't looking at the ball, they were looking to rebound. They were looking to to block out and to support each other. So I think those are the things that come to mind. I know that they're not necessarily specific, but I think it is a lot of feel.
How do you continue to facilitate that flow, like where you don't get in the way of what's happening?
Well, I think this goes back to like the listening piece and paying attention. So like that was later in the season. So we had played quite a few games with our group. So I think some of it is, I mean, a lot of it is in empowering our players. A lot of it is, a player-led team is going to win far more often than a coach-led team. So I understand that I'm a piece to our leadership, but like I'm hopefully going to be a small piece by the end of the season. and they're going to have their identity and they're going to be their group. Well, we'll help them prepare, and I'll help them shift their focus on things that maybe we need to and make some adjustments and tactically and all that. But like, I think that's the big piece to it, is empowering players and knowing who to talk to, knowing who to ask questions to. Hey, what's going on? Braxton, what's going on? What's going on with the group right now? Kind of like, or, knowing who to poke, be like, hey, like, what the fuck? Like, this isn't good enough, and knowing that you're going to get a response immediately from them, and that response is going to elevate your group's, effort and intensity and focus, so I think, those are kind of the things that I pay attention to, is knowing what roles our players have in our groups and then when to call on them to ask for more. And because like I said, I know the limitations of a coach, like even the greatest coach ever, one of them, Phil Jackson, my father's one of them, right? Even the greatest coaches, at the end of the day, the players play the game, and if they're looking over at the sideline, you're going to lose. Like, the game is played on the court, and that's why for some reason I just thought of youth sports, but any parent that is yelling at their kid as they're playing a game is doing their child a disservice.
What have you pushed back on that your dad has been telling you for a while, and you push back, you say, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. And then as you coach more games, running practices, like more interactions, more relationship time, FaceTime with players in that role, you're like, man, he was right. Like that's so true.
I think it goes back to that second opportunity to coach in Delaware, when Phil was like, you need to figure out how to win. Like, if you want to coach at the highest level, you have to figure out how to get your groups to win. And I think my dad was a very tough, gritty kid from Pittsburgh, Carolina alumni, just a hardworking guy. And his success came from grit and workaholism and toughness and harder, more, right? So I think I push back on that, a lot. And I think there is credence to that. I think you do need balance in life. You do need some boundaries in life, even if it is your passion and profession and your skills and those things that you're trying to develop. But I push back on that. But I think there is a mindset that you have to instill in a group to create that toughness. And the only way that you can create that is it's got to be really hard. And you gotta keep pushing them to push themselves and see what they're capable of. And I think sometimes, the coach I work with, she articulated really well, is like, there's, you can't ask, like, flow is a cycle, right? Flow is a very high energy, high chemical reaction. And then there's usually a crash, right? That's why you have to recover. And there, in the season, there's ebbs and flows, right? The goal is to peak at the end, right? And the peak is where you go all in, right? And so the reason I'm telling this is, you can't go all in all season. so I think that's the one thing that, I think that's what I learned from my dad, is I think he went all in all the time. And I think it wore him down. I think it got him cancer. I think it got him, it never got him to the peak where he wanted to be. At least that's my hypothesis or my observation of it. And then the contrary of learning from Phil and his recovery process, his holistic life that he lives, and kind of the man that he is. So I would say that is yes. Yes, I believe in mindfulness. I believe in recovery. I believe in balance to a certain extent. But at the end of the day, if you want a group to win at the highest level, they got to be really hard working, really tough, and willing to put themselves out there. And that that physical exertion is a vulnerable thing. So I think that vulnerability builds a bond, and you can kind of work off that muscle.